All righty, good. In the middle of I was doing a little sign language with a guy outside in the hallway there. Welcome in, kids. It is a Thursday edition of the Chico Bormann Show right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Boom enjoyed that last one. And if Boom enjoyed it, then we all enjoyed it.
I was like, wait, are you not ready yet? Should I not do it? I was looking down at the soundboard. I missed it until I looked up and told you were up.
You were very focused, and it was that was totally on me, but that's okay. Anyway, going to be a very special show. We hope. I don't want to jinx anything. You know, I can jinx things, Boom. You're well aware of that. But we hope we don't do that today. Very excited. Coming up in about 20 minutes or so, a little less than, we will be talking to the legend, Hoff. And I admit I stole that from Cleveland Browns Daily. I love the Hoff is what they call him. But see, what I don't know is, and when we bring Joe in at 120, the Hall of Famer, the legendary left tackle, one of the best to ever do it in Cleveland, and not just one of the best to ever do it, but really one of the best guys I think to ever represent a Cleveland sports team. I got to say this stuff before he comes on because he's going to think I'm just trying to, kiss his ass. And I mean, to some degree, yes, I am. But no, I mean, that is the truth. But we will talk to him at 120, and he's going to there are a whole bunch of topics on the table. Obviously, the Hall of Fame induction coming up this summer. By the way, Big Play will be there. We're going to be out and about, or as they say in Canada, Boom, oot and a boot. We will be out there in Canton for the Hall of Fame game. The Browns, of course, in that with the Jets, but obviously the Hall of Fame induction ceremony with Joe Thomas. So can't wait for that weekend. We'll talk to him about that, the events leading up to it, how he's preparing for it, all of that. Get into the draft, as we know. The Browns, DeJuan Jones, Big Thanos, Baby Thanos, Big Thanos.
Did you see the report that dropped on him yesterday, by the way? About why
basketball.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting. I'm curious about Joe's thoughts on that. What do you make of a guy who has bigger aspirations to be in the NBA but winds up in the NFL?
Probably realizes that and this isn't a knock on DeJuan Jones. I mean, for me.
No.
But, I mean, I think he probably knows he can't make it in the NBA. I mean, that's tough. But
he'd have to knock off a lot of weight, Chico.
Yeah, and I can't sit here and speak intelligently on his game with hoops, but I'm sure he's very good. But that's pretty elite level. But yeah, I saw that many teams had him as a first, maybe second round grade, but they were scared off by the is he going to go play hoops? Hey. that drop certainly helped the Browns, but who better to talk about DeJuan Jones? And we keep talking about molding a big, and I mean a big, huge, large, gigantic piece of clay. Who better to do that than Bill Callahan, who will be doing it, and then of course Joe Thomas, who obviously played the position and did so at a pretty high level. So we'll talk to him about that. Got some funny stories, too, as far as Joe is concerned. I will ask him. I know everybody asks the question, but I love hearing the answer from Joe. It never gets old for me. Every draft year, I'm sure that he is bombarded with hey, you decided to go on a fishing trip and not go to the New York for the draft. I just like the way he responds to it. Like, he doesn't. Joe is there's a lot of reasons why I think we like Joe Thomas, but I think one of the big reasons is he's pretty candid. And I have a feeling he's going to be pretty candid this afternoon. I hope he's going to be candid this afternoon, but you will enjoy that, I promise you, coming up at 1:20. Now, not to be outdone, Bret Boone, Maverick, Booney. We normally talk to Booney on Wednesdays for our Major League Baseball segment. We will do that today. He had a golf outing, and I've got a little something. I got a bone to pick with Booney about a little pic or video that I saw. So we'll do that with Booney at 2:15 today. And of course, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the Guardians, maybe a lot about the Guardians. A lot of people are, I don't know if it's still like leftover anger from the Cavs, but like last night, and it was another tough one. You know, the offense is not, and then you had Emmanuel Clase, and look, as Matt Underwood said earlier in the week, you've got Karinchak and Clase pretty much 1-2 as far as appearances. Clase, that happens. But the idea, I think I saw a stat courtesy of Zach Meisel. They've played 31 games this year. They're 14-17. 31 games and 16. Boom, think about this. 16 of the 31 games have been of the one-run variety. Like, I mean, that's you talk about, you know, margin for error, and we're talking about a team that is banged up, still trying to find their way offensively, and that's been a struggle, and it's been a tough watch. But man, you're not making it easy on yourselves.
I saw that stat, Chico, and the fact that they were on pace to do it for 84 games.
Yes.
When the record was 64.
Yes.
I think is very telling. And I don't know how concerned we should be just yet, because we know that Tito's teams typically get off to slower starts and slumps do happen.
Yeah.
But it feels like the slumping is happening just on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, no, you know what? That's fair. I think it's one thing when you have maybe one guy slumping, two guys slumping, but it seems like the line now you've got issues with the bullpen in large part because the bullpen's been worked and pushed because of the rotation, which is shorthanded because of the injuries. And granted, the new guys have done very, very well. Shane Bieber pitched his ass off last night, but it is what it is. I mean, but I'm with you. I definitely... This one feels a little bit more, and I think, again, it goes back to the expectations. I know I've been saying that, but like last year, nobody expected anything. Now, it's like those expectations are much higher, and they should be. And so when they're not met, but I saw like, I hate this freaking team. I'm done with the Guardians. This is all on Twitter last night. I'm going, guys, it's only, I mean, yeah, they're 3 games out of first place. By the way, the team ahead of them, Minnesota, comes to town this weekend. So, you know, they're 3 games back. Hopefully can get some of that back this weekend. But, yeah, they got to get going. There's no question about it. But it's not like it's not a long season. It's not like Tito's teams haven't, you know, struggled out of the gate before. I still say, in the end, I think they'll be okay. But they've got to get it going and got to get it going in a hurry. But we'll talk about that coming up in the second hour of the show with Bret Boone. By the way, Boone. May the 4th be with you. Is that what I'm supposed to say?
Yes. Are you not a big Star Wars guy? You sound very reluctant in your how you expressed
dumb. It's like all over the place.
It's a little corny.
A little.
You know, it's dad joke humor. May the 4th be with you.
Yeah. You know, I mentioned this before. I'm finding more and more people. Not that I'm trying to rationalize it, because I know it's. Look, we've already had the wow, Chico, that's pretty bad. The Wu-Tang Clan, which, well, I'll get to that in a second. I'm finding more and more people that are actually. You know what? I haven't seen it either. I can't remember who it was. It was just today. Somebody said on a national show that they hadn't seen it. Any of the Star Wars. I haven't either. It just never really.
None?
Zero. I mean, and I'm not saying that for a fact. I'm not saying it to brag, because I know a lot of people love it. It's just not anything that ever intrigued me. And I don't think it could hold my interest. I really don't. It's just, I don't know. But now I want to know, Boom. I feel like this should be a fair or foul, but it's an early fair or foul that I'm going to pose to you. Fair or foul, having not seen a Star Wars is much worse than never hearing of Wu-Tang Clan.
Foul. I don't even have to think about that one.
I had a feeling that's what.
Yeah. Now, I think. Do you not like sci-fi in general?
Yeah, I'm not a big sci-fi. Like Star Trek, I haven't seen any of those. My brother loves it.
Oh, my mom loves Star Trek.
Oh,
she
my
grew
gosh.
up on it. But yeah, I mean, it's understandable. If you're not a sci-fi guy, then I feel like it's okay to have not seen Star Wars, because you don't like sci-fi, you're probably not going to like that. And especially now with just the way how old the technology was in the original ones.
Yeah.
I think when you're just going into it and you don't have that nostalgic appreciation for a film like that, it really takes away from it. It just seems obviously less impressive. For its time, it was like it paved a new path for special effects in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But nowadays, it just looks so unadvanced, and I think that takes away from the overall experience if you're just jumping in now.
And you know me, and I think most people that have listened to me or know me themselves, God bless you if you do, know that I have no problem making fun of myself. I'm fairly self-deprecating. Now, still can be a little uptight, but I mean, for the most part, I can laugh at myself. I know some of this is, I know my weaknesses. I mean, how many times with Kaufman over the years and you and others, like, geez, Chico, you've never, the Wu-Tang Clan, I knew as soon as like 3 people were asked, and that was it. I didn't want anyone else asked, because it wasn't what they said.
You've been shamed enough.
Oh my God, it was how they said it. So I knew, even with that fair or foul, like, which one's more egregious, or is it more egregious that Star Wars, I haven't seen one, over Wu-Tang Clan? I had a feeling that would be foul, that Wu-Tang Clan's the one that I should. And I can't even, I don't even know why it is. Because I had so many people point this out to me and say, like, dude, it was right in your wheelhouse. Like, you graduated high school 93, graduated college 98. Like, what it would have been right there for it's on a silver platter. So how didn't you? I don't know.
I mean, I know I've said it before, but it's a very underground sound. Like, you weren't going to hear it being blasted.
Is Star Wars underground?
No, Star Wars was like a cult following type thing. Like,
Still
probably
is.
more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember just reading about how groundbreaking it was at the time that the first one came out. Lines out the door, all around the country, around the world.
It was like what, late 70s?
Yeah, 77. I want to say
77. Oh my goodness. How many Star Wars are there? How many Star Wars are there?
So there were originally 3, and then they made 3 more, and then they've had all these spin-offs.
Yeah, the spin-off.
I don't know how many spin-offs there were. I want to say maybe like 4 or 5. So we've got to be approaching 10 at this point.
Have you seen all the Star Trek movies too?
No, I haven't seen any of the Star Trek. I've seen
oh wow,
I've seen some Star Trek,
old
school.
I would have been dead wrong on that question. I would have guessed that you definitely have seen Star Trek movies.
I've seen a bunch of episodes because I grew up with my mom being like a super fan.
Yeah, I just remember real quick a story. Like back in the day as a kid, I would go to 5 o'clock mass, Saturday night, 5 o'clock mass, as opposed to going on Sunday. And when I came home, my brother, who still to this day loves Star Trek, but when I came home, he'd always have it on. And all I remember is hearing this, beep, 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 or whatever you know what I mean? Like the starship's little horn or whatever.
Are we talking Captain Kirk era here?
Yes.
Shatner?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I grew up on.
And I'm a big Shatner guy. In Boston Legal, he's incredible. Even in Rescue 911, that was one of my favorite ones too. But there was always that beeping sound, and it never looked anything close to being realistic. Maybe that's just it. Like, if it doesn't look at all realistic to me, like, I love true crime and documentaries, like, I can't get enough of them. So maybe that's just it. Like, if I think it's fake, that's why I don't like wrestling today. I used to like it as a kid because it was more believable. Now I can't stand it. And I know there's a large contingent of fans out there that love wrestling, and I don't fault anybody for it. But I just hate when people are like, hey, Chico, may the 4th be with you. Like, you too. Is there a hand signal or what do we? I don't know what we're supposed to do.
You could do the Spock thing. From
that would
Star
be
Trek.
Star Trek. Yes. Yeah, there we go. There we go. May the whatever be with you. All right. Anyway, So we got that out of the way. May the 4th be with you, and it's very heartfelt for me, as you can imagine. 216-626-7901. 216-626-7901. Also, you can find us on Twitter. We stream the show live each and every day, Monday through Friday, from 1 until 3. Go to @Chico Show, CHICO, Show, SHOWCLE, and you can live stream it with us and follow us along and all that good stuff. Also on YouTube, where you can make some comments if you would like. And by the way, like I said, Joe Thomas is going to be joining us here in just a few minutes, hopefully. Hopefully I didn't jinx it. And if you have questions for Joe, something you would like me to ask, within reason. Now, obviously you got to keep it clean, and it's got to be, something, something pertinent. Then I will be more than happy to do my best to try to get a question to Joe. But looking forward to talking to him, and then Boone coming up in the second hour of the show. So NBA playoffs. What was I know what I heard earlier today. It wasn't our boys at Tipico. It was another betting service. They did the top 4 teams, best odds to land Dillon Brooks. And what's funny is I'm listening to the show that had this question out there, and I'm screaming. Like, I knew the Cavs were number 1. And they're going around the room, and they're like, who do you think it is? Oh, I think it's Orlando. Oh, I think it's Detroit. Oh, I think it's Charlotte. Oh, I think it's... And they're all wrong. And then the team with the best odds to land Dillon Brooks is none other than our Cleveland Cavaliers. And we've already talked about it. I know he adds toughness. Now, do you get the sense, Boone, that now Dillon Brooks is almost being treated like a martyr of sorts? Like, now people are going, because I've never heard. I mean, truth be told, I've never heard of a team saying, he will not be back under any circumstances. It's almost like, okay, we want to make sure we embarrass you. And some people had a big problem with that. Like, here's a guy that's been with the organization for a while. He's helped you win games, but now you're kind of alienating him. I didn't necessarily have a huge problem with it, only because I didn't like the way, not only I didn't like the way that what he said as far as calling out LeBron, I also didn't like the fact that when they lost, he never talked to the media. I mean, basically you're screwing your teammates in that regard. So, he's going to be, no. Whoa. What's that? Yeah, I'll tell you what. We're going to break for a moment. When we come back, hopefully we're going to be able to hook up with Joe Thomas. He asked for the number. No. It's a link. And hopefully he'll be able to join us here when we get back. So we'll take a quick one. It is the Chico Bormann Show, back with the legendary Joe Thomas right here on the Big Play Network. All right, welcome back. It is the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Network. We had some technical difficulties because, I mean, why wouldn't there be technical difficulties? I mean, it's only, we go smooth sailing there for a while and everything is working well. And then wouldn't you know it, right when Joe Thomas is due to join us, we go through some technical difficulties. Boom, are we good to go? We got thumbs up. That's what I like to see. All right. Well, without further ado, we've been talking about it for a while and finally able to connect a guy you all are very, very familiar with. Spent 11 seasons, all 11 seasons of his NFL career right here in Cleveland for your Cleveland Browns this summer going into the Hall of Fame. The great, the legendary Joe Thomas joining us here on the Chico Bormann Show. Joe, it is awesome to have you on the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Chico. I'm so happy that you're going to have me on, man. After talking about it for several years, it feels like it's great to be with you today, buddy.
Now, I got to ask you, if I say Hall of Famer Joe Thomas, like, am I jinxing something? I don't want the guy that calls the players and go, you know what, Joe, sorry, but we had a miscount and good luck. Like, I'd feel terrible. So is it okay if we're calling you already before the induction ceremony this summer, Hall of Famer Joe Thomas?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm in the Hall of Fame, but I'm not technically in the Hall of Fame. And the best way that I can describe it to somebody is I'm engaged to be a Hall of Famer. So it's not that I'm married yet. I haven't walked down the aisle, haven't said the vows yet, but I'm very committed to this engagement, and I don't think it's going to get broken off. So I'm very comfortable if you want to call me a Hall of Famer right now.
Well, all I can say is if Canton gets cold feet, there will be people here in Cleveland banging on those doors, and it will not be pleasant. All right, Joe, let me start with this. You're obviously going in this summer, and I'm sure very, very exciting. As far as the speech is concerned, have you started it? Are you in the middle of it? Are you winging it? Like, how do you approach the speech?
Well, a couple of years ago, they kind of started limiting guys to about 5 to 7 minutes for their speech, which is awesome. I think it's really good, right? Because nobody wants to hear somebody drone on and on about yourself. Because in those situations, you're the only one that thinks it's interesting what you're saying after about 10 minutes. So the good news is it's a pretty short, tight speech. I've had an opportunity to give a few of these before, but we just started working on it actually this past week. Dan Murphy, he's one of the guys that works in PR for the Browns, been a friend of mine forever. He was on the Tomahawk Show with us as No Face Dan. He's helping Mark Bona write a book about me this summer that's coming out. So he knows me better than I know me. And so he's helping me kind of do the rough draft. And we just started that process about going back and forth.
Was there ever any thought in, like, was it even, wow, I got to go back and forth on this one, or were your kids are going to be inducting you basically, right? Presenting you, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So it'll be my kids and my wife doing the presenting. And I actually was thinking like, all right, who do I want to be my presenter? I'm like, okay, my dad, he was such a big part of my life. So he was my idol as a kid. A lot of people can relate to that. He was like king. He was basically LeBron James in my mind athletically growing up, even though he never played college sports. And he was just I'll say average high school athlete, but he was my dad. He was such a part of my life and such an inspiration in my sporting world until I got to college. And I was like, well, maybe I want my best friend from football, Alex Mack, to do it. But then I heard that as a presenter, you don't have to give an actual live speech anymore, and they just play a video for the presenters, right? For the same reason they don't want the players to go on and on forever. They don't want some player's agent to go on for 20 minutes as the presenter talking about himself. So they do a tight video presentation. As soon as I heard that, I go, oh man, there's nobody that's been a bigger impact on my professional career and the life that I have right now than my kids and my wife. They were my rock, my foundation. They were my reason why every single day that I got up and went to the facility and gave my best effort for my team, for my teammates, and for my city. And so knowing that they weren't going to have to be up on stage and give a live speech, which I don't know, could have been a little dicey. Not sure if that would have had any success or any problems with them getting stage fright being in such a big environment. But doing a video, I was like, this is a no-brainer. Kids and wife got to be the presenter.
Awesome story. Talking to Joe Thomas, the legendary Joe Thomas, obviously going on to the Hall of Fame this summer. Going to be a strong contingent of fans flocking to Canton, Ohio. We will be there. Big Play is going to have a pretty strong contingent of folks there as well as we look forward to it. All right. Wait, where to be? There's so many topics I want to cover with Joe Thomas. Now, the first one is you're asked this every single draft year, I'm sure, but I love the story. And honestly, I think it's one of the things, there's many reasons why and how you've been endeared to fans of Cleveland. First of all, obviously, pretty damn good career. But there's a lot of things. And one of them is the draft story. Where, we just saw it. We saw, what was it, Will Levis, right? He's in the green room and, well, he's not getting picked. And, man, he's, you feel bad for the kid. Whether you like him or not, you feel bad for the kid. You said, I'm good. I'm going to go fishing. I think your dad was mentioned, your father-in-law, one of your buddies. You go on Lake Michigan. That's what you wanted to do. Explain that process and explain the NFL's reaction to you deciding to do that.
Well, the NFL wasn't really excited when I told them I wasn't going to be at the draft because I had more important things to do. I had to hang out with my dad and go fishing. Because, hey, just like we saw with Will Levis, just like we saw with Brady Quinn and Aaron Rodgers, like they need protagonists. They need heroes and villains in the draft. They need guys that are going through the range of emotion from total elation when you're picked number one, or maybe you're picked way higher than you expect. And then they need people on the other end of the emotional spectrum, just despair and hopelessness when you drop in the draft, right? That's what makes great TV. And I wasn't really interested in being an actor in their television game because last time I checked, there was no games that were being played on NFL draft day. Like the games were coming in the fall. And that's what I dreamed of when I was a kid, playing in an NFL game, wearing an NFL helmet, living out my dream of playing a kid's game for a king's ransom. Like that's what every kid dreams about. Like I never had dreams of draft day. And I understand the kids today might be a little bit different because they watched the draft growing up. But when I was a kid, the draft wasn't on TV. So that moment was never a moment that was all that important to me. It was really just finding out, hey, where am I going to be able to continue my football career? And for me, it sounded like a lot more fun to go fishing with my dad than to go put on a suit that I didn't own and go to New York and hang out and slap backs with Roger Goodell and a bunch of other people that I'd never met.
You did not own a suit before you were drafted by the Browns.
What a beautiful life, right?
I
didn't have to have a suit. I think I had one polo. It was like a Wisconsin Badger Capital One polo that I would wear for road trips. That's all you need, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're in the right job. You don't have to own a suit.
So you know what it sounds like to me, and you kind of said there, like, it's the game, it's the NFL's game, and it's kind of, I believe I heard you say at one point a while ago, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I don't necessarily want to be an unpaid actor in their soap opera, because it's a television show. It's not necessarily the NFL draft, it's a television show. So
yeah, to
me, that's like aside from your playing career, you have also been, I don't want to say somebody who's critical. That's not fair. You've been very complimentary when it's necessary or you feel it's warranted as far as the league and say Roger Goodell. You also haven't shied away from some things that maybe you don't like that happen during your playing days, still going on post playing days. Give me your grade or just your assessment of Roger Goodell as the commissioner of the National Football League.
It's hard for me to give Roger a grade because I don't know what test he's taking. Like when I see the role of commissioner, I see that you're supposed to technically be focused on growing the game and making moves that are in the best interest of the game of football in general. And I see that sometimes they try to put that veil on him, like he's this guy that's in the middle that's just trying to lead the NFL game through murky waters and do the best thing for the fans and the players, the coaches, the owners. But in reality, he's paid by one group of people, and that's the NFL owners. So he's basically the lawyer or agent for the owners. And in that role, he's done tremendously successful because he's made the owners an enormous amount of money. He's brought in record TV deals. He's increased the value of franchises. He's done a really good job. I wouldn't say crushed the players, but he's got the upper hand with the players in collective bargaining agreements in several of them at this point. And so as far as the agents are concerned, that's why, or the owners are concerned, that's why they're paying him more than $40 million a year for the job he's doing, because he's making him super rich. I think as a commissioner, he's done a lot of double talk, and he's done a lot of things that are maybe hypocritical. And as a player and as a fan, I don't like it, right? Because first of all, like I mentioned, he's really kind of crushed the players and used leverage to take a lot of benefits away from them, a lot of money out of their pockets. And I think they've done a lot of things with the profit in mind, which I understand that's who he's getting paid by, is the owners, but profits in his mind, of things that they'll say one thing and then do the other. And it's like, I think you could do a better job long-term growing this game by building trust between the players, the fans, and the owners, rather than always just trying to make it a one-sided negotiation in your mind.
And you mentioned those players. I mean, if you go back to like the 80s and talking to different players that played in that era before you played, it's really downright criminal, to be honest with you. Like some of the injuries that these guys get, and look, I know you assume the risk, and you know that as well, and everybody knows that, but it just seems like they've been kind of swept to the side, like, yeah, we'll get to you guys later, yet they still want to put that out there like, well, Roger, player safety is our number one concern. No, it's not, dude.
Yeah.
Stop. It's not your number one concern.
Yeah, I've never been under the illusion that Roger Goodell cares about me at all, right? So I think players and fans that hear him say things like, oh yeah, player safety is our number one priority, or, you know, we love the fans, they're our most important asset. Like, I know that's not true. So it doesn't bother me when they do things that are blatantly in the opposite interest of players, player safety, and fans and fan experience and things like that, because in the end I realize that his role as the commissioner is to make the most money that he possibly can for the owners. And part of that, as a lawyer, if anybody's paid a lawyer, if anybody's dealt with lawyers, I understand that, hey, they're going to say things that are maybe half true sometimes, maybe not really true at all sometimes, to try to curry as much favor as they possibly can to get more leverage to make more money.
You mentioned the double talk, and as soon as you said double talk, I couldn't help but smile, because I've had plenty of rant about, you know, the hypocrisy. And like, I agree with you, like from a popularity standpoint, hell, everybody's playing fantasy football and gambling, but see, okay, I just thought of another one. Gambling's another one where, like, years ago, and it's great. I mean, it's great now that's, you know, people can do what they want to do with it. But like years ago, wasn't it Roger Goodell who was like adamant? He's like, there is no way that the NFL is getting into bed with gambling and put a team in Vegas. What are you, nuts? Oh, wait, we can make how much money? Okay, let's go ahead and do that. And it's that sort of thing. The idea, and he loves to drive this one home along with player safety. Our owners, can't even get through it without laughing. Our owners and front office executives are held to a much higher standard than the players. Really? Huh? No, that's BS.
Yeah, I would say the gambling thing, I'm maybe a conspiracy theorist on this a little bit, is they were saying we'll never allow gambling, we'll never have a team in Vegas, knowing that there's going to be gambling, there's going to be a team in Vegas. They just wanted to be able to make sure that they could lobby the right lawmakers to be able to make sure that they gain the most amount of leverage and the most favorable laws in all the states, so that when they did enact gambling, they could reap the greatest portion of revenue and profits from that gambling and from having a team in Vegas, from moving the Rams from St. Louis to LA. And so I think for me, I get along with Roger great. I think as a commissioner, you know, he's done exactly what the job he's been tasked with to do, right? And he's done a masterful job taking those bullets. He gets booed every draft day. By and large, the players don't really love him that much because of his discipline policies, some of his other policies that he's enacted that are anti-player. But the one thing that has gotten under my skin a lot is that last thing that you said about Roger Goodell. And I just lost it because I got so worked up about the gambling thing. What was the last thing you said about him?
Oh, about the executives, owners, especially,
Yeah,
like,
it's the higher
say like
standard one.
a Daniel Snyder.
Yes.
Let's use him as an example.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
they're held to a higher
Right.
standard.
That's been the one thing that's bothered me a little bit, because we see time and again him coming down with heavy-handed discipline for players, which it's like with my kids. Like, however my wife decides to discipline my youngest, I'm okay with, as long as it's consistent amongst all four of them, right? And it's like with Roger. Hey, if you want to hold the players to a high standard because they represent the NFL shield, I get it. I'm okay with that. Whatever that standard is, let's make the standard for everybody. But don't tell me to my face that you hold the owners and the executives to a higher standard when we know among many, many situations that is not even a little bit remotely true. If anything, they're held to a lesser standard, right? Because we see players doing the same things that owners are doing, getting caught, getting in trouble, and the players are getting a much stiffer suspension and fine than the ownership or the executives, who are getting a slap on the wrist or being swept under the rug. And I think you lose a little bit of credibility if I'm Roger Goodell, if you're saying those words about owners and executives being held to a higher standard, when it's patently false based on many occasions. And I get it a little bit, like, hey, you work for the owners. It's hard to punish the person that's your boss,
Right.
but that's also part of your role as a commissioner. You do have to look at all 32 teams as one entity and be able to separate, hey, I got to punish you because it's what's right for the game of football. It's what's right for the NFL, and you should understand that. That's part of my role. And just because you may not like it, just because you may not like me because of it, this is what's best for the NFL, and I have to do it.
Protect the shield. Protect the shield. I laugh every time I hear that. All right, we're going to move on from that, and I appreciate your candor there. I didn't know which way to go with it. I didn't know if maybe, but like I said, I've heard you over the years make certain comments, and you haven't shied away from certain things, and I think we all appreciate that. All right, let's get to the Browns. Let's get to the career. I mean, the record set and everything are just. I don't think anyone. How many consecutive Pro Bowls was it? Was it 10? 10 consecutive Pro Bowls? I mean, I don't even know if that's been broken. You've got the 10-3-6-3, which is. Do you know? Oh, by the way, do you know who? I may or may not have done research on this. Do you know who you were attempting to block when that tricep curled up on you on snap 10-3-6-3?
I was blocking Brian Orakpo from the Tennessee Titans. And I remember that because earlier on in my career, he was playing for the Washington Redskins, who were the Redskins at the time. And I remember he was a tough out. Like, he was a dude that I lost some sleep over because he was little, he was fast, but he was super strong. Came out of the University of Texas. He was like a 500-pound bencher for a guy who's like 250. And so he was an all-day sucker. And so I remember going against him. It was a little bit later in both of our careers, obviously, in that game. But guys that stick out in my mind were guys that gave me a tough out, especially earlier on in my career. They kind of burned that in my memory. So that's why I remember that guy.
How important is, I mean, we joke around, but 10,363 consecutive snaps. Like, I would think that of all the things you've accomplished, and this one coming up this summer with the Hall of Fame is awesome. But you always hear players say, like, my teammates knew that they could count on me every single day. And you took that to a whole new level. Of all the accomplishments, where does that one rank?
That's number one for me. In college, I had Barry Alvarez, the great legendary coach at Wisconsin. And that was one of his sayings he loved to put out there. It was count on me, right? And I really took that to heart, because as a lineman, I'm not scoring any touchdowns. I'm not gaining any rushing yards. I'm not getting any catches. But what I can do is I can help my brothers and my teammates do those things for our team success, for our team goals. And it was really important to me that they knew I was going to be there for them. They could count on me when times get tough. I'm not the guy that's going to turn and run. I'm going to stay and fight with you. You want to be a foxhole type guy. And that's who I tried to be. And I think when I see that number, the 10,363, to me, it represents that you could count on me 10,363 times in a row. I was going to be there. I was going to be the steady, reliable rock that you had to be out there at that left tackle position. And when I was in Utah last weekend sitting for the sculptor to work on my bust for the Hall of Fame, they had a little camera crew and they were asking, hey, what does this mean to you? What do you see when you look at this bust? And it's kind of weird having like a clay sculpture of yourself looking back at you. And so it was an awkward moment. I didn't really know what to say, but I looked at it and I thought to myself, like, I hope that when Cleveland Browns fans travel down to Canton and they walk through the hall and the Hall of Busts and they see that bust, that person represents them. Maybe not what they look like exactly, but the values of this city, the values that I had as a teammate, as a Cleveland Brown, as the left tackle that said, count on me. I want to be reliable. I want to just come to work every single day with a blue collar mentality. I want to do my job. I hope when fans get a chance to see that bust, they see it as a representation of themselves and they see my work ethic, my blue collar mentality in that bust, because that's who I wanted to be as a player. That's what I always strive for.
Love that. Legendary Joe Thomas joining us on the show again, going into the Hall of Fame this summer. You mentioned that sculptor. I got to ask you about that because I heard, I don't know if it was you, I heard somebody say like 9 hours with the sculptor. Is this like one of those where like in those art classes where they don't even let you go to the bathroom? Like obviously you had your clothes on, I'm sure, but you're just sitting there and like for 9 hours you can't move. Like how does that work? And what's the bust going to look like? Because you had different. I mean, you had long manes, you had beards, no beard. What's Joe Thomas going to look like for us?
Yeah, it's going to be the creative player version of Joe Thomas because it was funny, sitting there for 9 hours. The cool thing is you realize that they want you to be happy with the bust. And I didn't really know that was going to be the most important thing in the process. I thought they were just going to pick a picture and like make a bust. And then when they unveil it, you just see what it is. And it's like, oh, that's all right. Like the Ronaldo bust when Cristiano Ronaldo got that thing unveiled and whatever circus animal was under there. It looked like I was a little surprised, but also happy that they were like, hey, we're not going to finish until you're happy with what you have. And so I was like, okay, perfect. Well, I want my hair when I was a rookie, when I actually had it, like no receding hairline. And I want a nice beard. I can still grow the good beard. Don't make it gray. He's like, don't worry, it's bronze. It's all the same color. It doesn't matter. I'm like, okay, perfect. But I'm like, I want a nice little beard. I want a Fat Joe. Like that's who the guy was that made the Hall of Fame. But maybe not 2012 Fat Joe when I was like 330, 325. Maybe like rookie year or 11th year when I was like 300. So I'm like, yeah, let's do the in-between with that guy. Make sure I got some hair. And so it's actually been really cool to work with. Ben Hammond is the name of the sculptor. He's one of the best portrait sculptors in the world. And so for me to be able to just sit with him and listen to him and look at some of the other stuff in the studio was really a joy. And I'm not like an art geek or anything, but I can appreciate people that are masters at anything that they do. Like Chico, you're a master of the soliloquy. You're a master of the monologue. And that's what I've always loved listening to you. I'm so excited that you're back in Cleveland now. I loved listening to Chico After Dark on 92.3 back in the day, but it was really cool sitting with him and listening. And yes, he did let me go to the bathroom.
First of all, let me just interject real quick. I'm not going to take up all your time here. I promise. We got to get to the Browns. People want to know about your thoughts on the draft. The fact that you reached out, and this is me personally. I did not know initially when things went down and things happen, whatever. And I did not know initially that you had reached out. And somebody told me, they're like, well, hey, at least Joe Thomas was a fan. And I was kind of like, yeah, what? And they're like, no, Joe Thomas reached out. That really, I mean, I don't mean to, everybody's support means a lot, but when you said the things you said or wrote the things you wrote, like I was blown away. And it's just, again, another one of those things where we talk about, reasons that or how you've endeared yourself. You tell the story about what 10-3-6-3 means and what you want the bus to look like. The everyday man, the fishing trip, like that's what you exude. I mean, obviously we know you were one of the best left tackles to ever lace them up, but I think it's that everyday man and that work mentality that has you. I mean, you know it as well as anybody. I'm not asking you to brag on yourself, but the fans truly just love you, not just because Hall of Fame tech. Now, I understand if you flamed out after 3 years, they probably would. But I mean, they absolutely love you, and I think it's reciprocated, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a big reason why Cleveland embraced me, but I loved Cleveland so much. That's why We still keep a condo in Cleveland, and we love coming back. My kids love coming back because I feel so at home. Like, it's, even though I didn't grow up there, I feel like the values of the folks that live there, the values of the people that cheer for the Browns are perfectly in line with me, myself, the way I was raised. And I always just felt comfortable at home. And I think that people are always looking for a place, a group, a tribe that they can relate to, that they can be embraced by, that they can see things the same way. And so it was always just such an easy transition for me to be myself in Cleveland. And I think everybody's kind of looking for that. Like, where can I go and be myself, whether it be with family or friends or community? And I think that's the thing that I love the most about Cleveland, like real people, and they're exactly who you see that they are, and they're exactly who they say they are. And I think part of that's Midwest mentality, Midwest values, but I think that's why it's just such a great city. It's such a great group of people.
So, Joe, you're a big man yourself. DeJuan Jones comes out of Ohio State. They get him in the 4th round. And now we're hearing today, it's funny that the reason why a lot of teams may have skipped on him was he has this dream to play basketball, or he has higher aspirations to play basketball. I don't know. But obviously, we hope that he's going to be a great tackle, maybe a left tackle, or we'll get to Jedrick Wills in a moment, but wherever. The first piece of advice, obviously, Bill Callahan knows what he's doing, but he comes to you and says, Joe, what's the biggest thing, the most important thing I need to know to be the best offensive tackle I can be?
I would say you need to focus on the minutia, focus on the details, because the difference between good and great, or average and good, in the NFL as an offensive lineman is the number of mistakes you make. You need to eliminate the mistakes, because that's how you're graded. It's great to take a player and grab a defensive end and curl him up into a little ball and dribble him down the field and dunk his head on the sideline. But you know what? If you give up 2 sacks in the next 2 plays and your quarterback gets ripped in half and carried off the field in a stretcher, like, your ass is going to be sitting on the bench. So you've got to focus on the detail and the consistency of your position. That's what will allow those great skills that he has, that amazing skill set, to turn into an all-pro caliber player.
You often talk about, whenever you break down, pass protection and just the tackle position, you always talk about, the kick out, whatever. And I'm not going to pretend to know all the ins and outs of that, but watching it enough and hearing you talk about it enough, one of the things that I've been wanting to ask you for the longest time is that back in Wisconsin, and even when you first got drafted, I heard people say that, well, Joe Thomas's style is unorthodox. Like, you were a great track and field, a great shot putter or whatever, and that you kind of have a shot put type, I guess, technique with it. Is that something that now is not unorthodox? And would you teach that to somebody if they wanted to know, how did you do it?
Yeah, one of the humbling things that has happened to me in the last 5 or 10 years, and one of the things that makes me feel old, is that you're hearing some of these guys that are coming out of the draft now saying, hey, I watched Joe Thomas when I was in high school and college, and I tried to model my game after him. So you are seeing a lot of guys moving to a little bit more of that style of pass set with that kick set like I had, which looks a lot like a shot put, which is where I picked it up from, right? Nobody was doing that back in the day. Nobody was lifting their leg up and kicking back and sliding back like a shot putter. But as I was kind of thinking about things, because I've always been a critical thinker and I've always thought about stuff with different perspective. And I think that was one of my edges when I was playing in the NFL, because I didn't just take what the coach told me and blindly put it onto the field. Like, I wanted to think about it critically from like a scientific biomechanical standpoint. And I thought, okay, the number one most important thing in the pass set for an offensive tackle is to get back as fast as you can, especially off the snap on your first kick. How do I do that? Well, the fastest dudes in the world that do that are the Olympic shot putters that are doing the glide. And they're big men like me. They're big, powerful people. So how did they do that? And so I kind of broke it down and sort of reverse engineered the pass set based on the glide coming from the shot put, where you've got the weight on the inside of your foot, you're on the ball of your feet, you squeeze your toes like they're the talons of an eagle to create tension in the bottom of your foot. And then you're not pushing back off your inside heel, you're pushing back off the ball of your feet, like I said. And then you're kicking back and you're using that kick, that pull of your leg to pull you off the line of scrimmage quickly. And I think it was what allowed me to play into year 11 when I'd lost a lot of speed because of injury. I lost a lot of quickness, but I'd mastered that technique, and that efficiency was so much better than most people that were doing it, that I was still able to stay ahead of pass rushers that were much younger and much faster than I was.
All right, let me quickly ask about Jedrick Wills. They picked up the option. Yep. No big surprise there. It kind of buys them time, but I think they did wait until the very end. In your mind, is that a message, and is this pretty much, now or never for Jed? And what's kind of holding him back in your mind, if anything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's really mindset that has held him back. You see great stretches of play from him. Like, there's games where he plays really well, but like I mentioned earlier, playing left tackle is not about how many good games you have. It's about how many bad games and how many bad plays you have. And I think with him just having that mindset and focus for 70 plays or however many plays there are in a game, and then being able to replicate that the next week and not let any excuses come into your mind, not let any doubt of what you have to do on any given play, like knowing exactly what you need to do and going out and doing it every play, is that consistency that it takes to be a great left tackle, because he's got it in him. Like, I'm just as excited about him now as I was when we drafted him, because the skill set is there, his technique has been refined, and now it's just a matter of having the mindset and the focus to be able to do it every single play. So it'll be fun, because I'm hoping that, knowing that he's going to free agency possibly, or he's going to at least be up with his contract, I hope that motivates him to bring out that next level of focus, so we see the man that Jed Wills can be for 17 regular season games this year.
I expect your bias for this question in just a couple more minutes with you. I promise. I expect your bias for this question, but is jump around at the start of the fourth quarter, is it the best college tradition in sports, in college sports?
I know my Buckeye friends are going to say that dotting the I is the best tradition, but it's not. It is jump around. It's more than anything what you hear college players saying. Hey, I was excited to go play here because I couldn't wait to see the whole stadium jump around.
They start jumping around. I mean, like the opposing teams they get fired up with it.
Well, it's actually worked against Wisconsin a little bit, because players on the other team are so excited to see it that they're getting juiced up. They're getting jacked up. And as a Badger, you've seen it 30 times during your career. So it's still cool, but you're not as excited as maybe the other team is. So it kind of works against us a little bit.
All right, last thing for you. I don't think you'll be able to see it, but Boone, we're going to put a picture up on the screen. I sent you a text to this picture. This is way back in 2005. Oh, my goodness. Way back in 2005. So I worked in Erie, Pennsylvania before I came back to Cleveland. And the general manager of the Erie Seawolves being the AA affiliate for the Tigers, was a Wisconsin grad. I mean, through and through Wisconsin. He'd always talk garbage. I'd talk garbage. And going into 2004, now you guys had Ohio State's number. I think 2004 you guys won at the Shoe, and I think it was like 3 straight at the Shoe you guys had won. Wisconsin had won. So going into that 2004 game, I mean, he was ready for me. He's like, so, what do we – I'm like, John, they've got this. I mean, it's at home. It's at the Shoe. I don't know what you're getting all excited about. Now, deep down, I was worried like you wouldn't believe. But he says to me, he goes, Chico, we got to put a nice little bet on this. I'm like, well, I'm poor. I work in radio. I can't. He's like, no. We're going to make this really interesting. He's like, if you win, the Buckeyes win, we'll give you a suite for the night. Everything's on us. Alcohol, food, top notch, whatever you want. 20 people, doesn't matter. I'm like, oh, that's nice. But yeah, well, thanks for ruining it for me, Joe. But anyway, if the Buckeyes lost, then I definitely lost. I had to stand atop the Seawolves dugout, 7th inning stretch, in a Wisconsin jersey and lead the crowd, which were mainly Steelers fans, so they hated me being from Cleveland, and lead them and take me out to the ball game. But he picked a Brooks Bollinger jersey. Now, nothing against Brooks Bollinger, but I was so surprised because, like, Ron Dane had recently won a Heisman, Your boy Anthony Davis, who ran wild on them in the shoe that day, and you helped pave the way for that. I mean, but he picked Brooks Bollinger. I wanted to say thank you because that was easily the most embarrassed and the most afraid I've ever been in my entire life, courtesy of you and Barry Alvarez and the gang.
You know, my best talent as a dad is being able to make people feel embarrassed. And I'm very happy that that talent started way, way back in 2004 when we beat the Buckeyes in the shoe. And, you know, since I moved to Cleveland, everyone's like, oh, you must feel bad about living in Buckeye country. I'm like, no, I love the Buckeyes. Never lost to them. 2-0. Beat them at home in 2003. Beat them on the road in the shoe in 2004. I got nothing but love for my Buckeyes.
Admit it. Their fans can be, I mean, I'm one of them, but their fans can be annoying, right? I mean, it's kind of like Yankee fans. It can be, it's okay. You can say.
They've had so much success. It's just human nature. When you have that much success and then all of a sudden you lose one game, the expectations in the bar are so high that you lose reality that, hey, not every team in the college football landscape gets to win almost every game and compete for a national championship every year. So you get a little bit spoiled. There's no doubt about it.
Joe, I can't thank you enough, man. We are really looking forward to, I know you are, but these fans and the city, everybody's looking forward to you going into Canton in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Much deserved. Love the conversation. Would certainly love to do it again. And like I said, we'll be down there in Canton. But thank you so much for your time, the kind words, and just representing this city as well as you do, buddy. Thanks.
Appreciate it, brother. Anytime, Chico.
All right. Again, that is the legendary Joe Thomas Hoff. I stole that from, I meant to tell him that too. Browns Daily calls him Hoff, which I think is just the cool nickname. Is it Joe? Is it, Hall of Fame? Just Hoff. But you heard him say it. I mean, to me, that pretty much epitomized the 10-3, 6-3, count on me, but then the bus. Like, I want it, I want them to see Cleveland. I want them to see, when they see that bust, I want them to see Cleveland, Ohio. And it's just, I mean, he's special in so many ways. Obviously, he's one of the best to ever do it. But when you couple that with his love, his passion, his commitment to the city, the fans, I mean, he's one of the best, no doubt about it. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, talk a little bit about that. And also, if you would like to chime in, you can certainly do that. 216-626-7901. Coming up at 2:15, we're going around Major League Baseball with our good buddy Bret Boone. Final hour of the show on this Thursday is on the way next. It's the Chico Bormann Show. More to come right here on the Big Play Network. And welcome back. Second hour on this Thursday edition of the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Network, as we are hanging with you till 3. Coming up in just a bit, we will be going around Major League Baseball, and it hasn't been very pretty for the Cleveland Guardians. Off today, very important series with the Minnesota Twins coming up this weekend. The Guardians trailing the Twins by 3, 3 games in the division, and of course a series beginning Friday with Minnesota. So we'll talk to Bret Boone, former All-Star second baseman, about all of that going around Major League Baseball with Bret coming up at 2:15. Absolutely love that with Joe Thomas. Kind of everything you expect. It's what you see is what you get, but you just truly appreciate not only the commitment that went into his craft. Like, it wasn't just, oh, wow, yeah, he's a great player and one of the best to ever do it. But you know what? I can't even, boom. We're talking about a guy that plays one of the most physical positions, has one of the most physical jobs you could have. And he had 10,363 snaps, and who knows how much longer it would have gone if he didn't have, the torn tricep injury when facing Arakpo. Like, it blows my mind. Like we talk about Cal Ripken and the Iron Man streak. Like, nobody's going to break that streak. Nobody.
I was actually at that game where Joe got hurt, and I remember like that feeling in the pit of my stomach, and it was so surreal. Like, you're just expecting him to get back up. He's an Iron Man.
Yep.
Like, this is Iron Man status stuff that he's doing. And yeah, it's one of those streaks that I just, especially in today's day and age, I find that hard to be matched again. So,
there's so many more questions I could have asked him. As it was, I felt terrible for keeping him that long. But like, how close was he to missing some games? Like that, you hear these guys talk about how, Monday morning, whenever it is Sunday morning, trying to get out of bed. Yeah, trying to get out of bed is just, nearly impossible. But, man, great stuff. All right, let's go to the phones. Again, 216-626-7901. And we're heading down to Hotlanta. Brian is next up on the Chico Bormann Show. What's up, Brian?
Hey, man. Good afternoon. How you doing?
Fantastic, buddy. How are you?
Good. I have a funny Joe Thomas story, so hopefully he maybe listens to the replay. So going back to, it was 2006 was the draft, right? 2006?
2007.
When he got drafted?
07. Yep, 2007.
07. Yeah, so I was living in Milwaukee at the time, and I was the president of the Browns backers club.
Of course you were.
We were called the Brew City Browns backers, okay? And so we're sitting in the bar that day, and Joe gets drafted. And, of course, we're surrounded by a bunch of Wisconsin fans, too, so the place erupted. So fast forward maybe about a month or two, and I get my phone number and information was out on the Browns Backers Worldwide site, and I get a call one day, and it was a woman, and she says, hey Brian, my name is so and so. I said, oh, nice to hear from you. She's like, well, we're looking for a bar to come watch the Browns games this next year, and I told her all about it, where we were, and I said, oh, that's great. She's like, yeah, my son just got drafted by the Browns, and so I could tell you the last person I thought she was going to say was Joe Thomas. I said, what's his name? Oh, his name is Joseph. And I said, oh, that's nice.
Joseph.
And I said, Joe, what's Joseph's last name? And she said, Thomas. And I said, ma'am, your son Joe Thomas? She said, yes. And I said, so you're looking for a place to come watch your son play football? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you do know the NFL package is an option. I'm thinking, well, maybe Joseph may be able to help you with that. But they came down, Chico, for 2 years. They came and watched almost all the games with us, and they just sat in the corner and had a couple friends, and everyone kind of left them alone. But it was awesome, man. So I always tell that story. I wish hopefully he can hear that, because I'm sure he'd get a kick out of it. But they were the best people, and obviously up there, we embraced the fact that he was a local guy. And so anyway, just wanted to share that.
Brian, love that story, man. Thank you so much for sharing it. Yeah, that's kind of that, Midwestern mentality. But, you heard him talk about his dad. Hey, my dad wasn't necessarily the greatest athlete in the world and but, he was basically like my best friend, like that. We always fished. So, of course, I was going to go fishing with him and I think a few others that day. But, of course, I was going to go on Lake Michigan and go fishing and wait for my name to be called. I love the fact that the NFL, like even then, the NFL had to be like, what do you mean? I think, if I'm not mistaken, he was the first one when they started making that a thing. Like, hey, come to New York and we'll hook you up in a green room and you're going to be – because only so many of them get invited – I think he was the first one to say, like, thanks, but no thanks. And he's like, I don't like New York. I don't want to, what do I want to be in New York for? And then you heard him say, like, I didn't have a suit. I got to buy a suit to go to New York. Something I don't even want to be. He goes, and it wasn't that I don't think he meant it disrespectfully, but he's like, hey, this is kind of my day, but part of my day is sharing it with the people I love the most and doing what I love the most with them, and that's fishing. I love that. Like, I'm sure the NFL's like, who the hell's this guy think he is?
I like how he put it with, I don't want to play in your little games, and I'll be playing games in the fall.
Unpaid actors in a soap opera. If ever a statement, and not only has was it true, but has that aged well? Unpaid actors, now they're paid, but I mean at the time for the draft. Actors in a soap opera, just think of it that way. Wow. I didn't know, because Boone, you've known me for a while. Roger Goodell is very good. Joe said it very well also. Roger Goodell obviously has done his job as an employee of the owners, as far as, I think a while back, like 2010, 2011, I think they had made a goal that by 2020, or he made the goal, we want to have this league worth about, I don't know, say $24-25 billion with a B. And they've surpassed that. And now you've got these, the television contracts, you got all this stuff going down, and it's just, it's been absolutely, positively incredible when you think about what the money he's made. But the flip side of that is, and I love the fact that Joe was candid about it, like, yeah, let's not pretend that this guy doesn't talk out of both sides of his mouth. Let's not pretend that this guy doesn't say player safety is number one. Oh, hey, by the way, can we squeeze in another Thursday? Can we make the schedule 18, 19, maybe 20 games eventually? It's just, I'd rather, I know some people will say he has to say that. I'd rather he just not say anything at all than kind of play us all for fools. All right. And with that, this guy is no fool. He may have tried to play me for a fool the other day, which we're going to get to. Let's talk some baseball, as we do each and every week with our all-star second baseman, Bret Boone. He is also the host of the aptly named Bret Boone podcast, joining us here on the Chico Bormann Show on the Big Play Network. Booney, first of all, thank you for. I know you had some issues there yesterday, couldn't make it, and you said we were actually absolutely going to do this. But I've got a little bone to pick with you. So I see this video on, I think it was Twitter, and you were at a golf tournament, I think I don't know if it was out west somewhere. You're at a golf tournament. You can fill in all the blanks there for who and what, but it was a helicopter leaving the premises. I assume that was you in the helicopter, and my first thought was, like, is he going to Martha's Vineyard? Like, is he actually at the Rose Garden at the White House? Booney, what was that? What was the golf outing
Chico,
itself, and then your transportation?
Chico, that was my Uber, and that's how I roll. That's how I roll these days.
I like how you're very matter of fact about it.
It was funny. It was funny. I landed. I got a text from a buddy of mine that was putting on the golf tournament. It was the Ryan Franklin, John Daly. It was a charity event.
Yeah.
So I haven't been to Oklahoma City very many times, but I landed. I got, how you're going somewhere and it's an event, and okay, I said, who's picking me up? So I get a text from a random phone number saying, Mr. Boone, I'll be picking you up at the airport and getting you to the hotel. And I said, oh, great, Jason. And I landed. And Jason says, I'm downstairs waiting for you. So I go down, get in his car, and we start heading off. He goes, I really think we should take the helicopter at this hour. It's going to take us an hour to get there. I'd rather just get in the helicopter. It's about 11 minutes.
Sure. Oh yeah, that's a logical decision. Yeah.
And I'm laughing because I've been, Chico, I've got to do a lot of things in my life. I've never been in a helicopter.
Ooh, I didn't.
And I thought to myself, this will be interesting. So we pull up to we go to the private side of the airport. We pull on the tarmac, and he gets clearance to come on, and we park the car, and there's this helicopter sitting there. Now, this wasn't an Air Force One helicopter by any means. It looked like something you put together with a toolkit. And I was a little worried. I turned to him. I said, Jason, I just met you. I said, how long you been flying, buddy? He goes, about 25 years. And in my mind, all these things, I'm playing it cool, but at the same time, I'm thinking, is this safe? No way Ryan would put me with a guy that wasn't safe. So anyway, I said, well, I guess if this is the way you go, jump in the helicopter. And it was awesome. I mean, it was HC 200, I think, were the tail number. And he's talking to the tower, and I've got my headphones on, so I'm able to listen to all this going on. And he's talking with the girl in the tower, and it's like they're friends. I said, this is bizarre. And he goes, oh, you mind? We got to pick my girlfriend up on the way. Like we're just whipping by in a cab. Sure enough, he's talking to the tower, and he says, hey, I'm going to pull over to my place. Is that a problem? No. Clearance, you got clearance. He pulls down and it just lands in his backyard. His girlfriend's there like, honey, I've got the oven and the roast. Will we be back in a few hours? Yeah. She jumps in the helicopter. Lovely. She was very nice. We're just chatting the whole way, and he's just off to the golf tournament. We get to the casino. He's talking to somebody at the place I'm staying to make sure they have a parking spot for us. And here we go. We got a guy, we got a guy in the back of the hotel with like the, air traffic control.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And we park, and I walk in and I get to my room, and it was hilarious.
You immediately put on the expensive robe and walked around in it because I
sat there and I said, did that just happen? And he was telling me like during COVID, he used to there's a real famous chicken place that it's probably our version, San Diego's version of In-N-Out Burger. And he goes, yeah, and it's about 50 minutes away. So I would just take the helicopter and he'd have a parking spot for me at the chicken place, and I'd get a ton. And he goes, and then on the way back, I would just drop it into my buddy's backyard. I would just like lower it down on a rope, and I'd get chicken for everybody.
Why not go through the drive-through? Come on, man.
It was really cool. So
that's a power move. You go through the drive-through.
Awesome. He was an awesome pilot. He was one of Ryan's friends. He was in the tournament. So it was interesting. I get to Ryan's house the second night after the tourney. We go over to Ryan's house to, get together. He was a teammate of mine in Seattle for 5 years. Beautiful place. I pull in the gates in a car this time. And sure enough, what's parked on the side of Ryan's house? My helicopter. It was my helicopter by the end of the
sure.
But definitely a first, and I had a really good time.
My fear is that this will now be the preferred mode of transportation for the Boone podcast. So like,
I don't know about that. It was fine. It was a sunny day. The wind was out of the north, but it wasn't gusting. I don't know that I'd like that for travel consistently. I played it cool. A plane's one thing, but a helicopter
was out of the north, wasn't gusting.
Yeah. I don't think it's my preferred. I kind of like wheels on the ground.
Oh, Booney, it's never a dull moment with Bret Boone.
It's if anything else, Chico, I did it for your show to have some content instead of us bantering around about the world of Major League Baseball.
Well, Yeah, eventually we're gonna have to get to that. But no, you're right.
Yeah.
I just when I first saw it, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, that's just got to be that's Daly's helicopter, or that's a.
No, Daly had his
I expected George Bush and his dog Buddy to be walking off that thing.
Daly had his tour bus, which is a separate entity. That thing was unbelievable.
The Hooters, is it still a Hooters bus?
It's not a Hooters bus. It's a John Daly. I think it's the John Daly drink. There was the Arnold Palmer, which was the lemonade and iced tea. This is the lemonade, iced tea, and vodka.
Oh, hell yeah.
He's got his tour bus wrapped in a big advertisement. Really, really cool tour bus. And Johnny, hanging out. That's the first time I hung out with John, and for about 24 hours, it was pretty awesome. It was a good time
for about 24 hours. I love that. All right, he's host of the Bret Boone podcast as well. We'll get to that here momentarily. Let's go back to obviously the Uncle Arnie's Yankees just took 2 out of 3 from the Guardians. Guardians are limping on. We got people on Twitter now because the sky's falling. They've been a very tough watch, and I mean a very tough watch. Like even the game they won in that series, which we're going to get to here in a second, like that was some of the most boring baseball, some of the worst baseball I've seen in like a while. The first 8 innings, it was like I should have just taken a nap. Then they come back and that. My question though is, and this is I'm not putting you on the spot or anything, you know that, but so Uncle Arnie, of course, is getting grilled by everybody in New York. Like, what are you doing taking out Domingo Germán? What I think is interesting is the next day, just by chance on Tuesday, we had Matt Underwood, who's the television play-by-play voice for the Guardians. And he came on and he said, they were killing him, and I know that's like the normal fan reaction. He's like, but the Yankees are not a very analytical organization, whereas analytics are a big deal. So did that ease some of the pressure in your mind? Did you think, oh man, you shouldn't have made that move? Or are you like, well, that's a gut feel. You're gonna make those mistakes.
Well, first of all, I kind of don't agree with Underwood. They are more analytical, I think, than you think.
Okay.
I've had many debates with Aaron about it, and when I think it's a good time for analytics, and when I think analytics can be pushed too far. That being said, I mean, since my brother, and I'll separate the brother thing right here.
And you can, and you do a good job.
Because I don't agree with everything Aaron does, but I realize that where he sits in New York, it's a different animal. I've watched him pretty closely since he got the job. He's done a hell of a job. He's won 100 games 4 times. And I look at that ball club, and they're hurt every single year. And it seems like everybody's hurt. For instance, this year you've got the big offseason acquisition, Rodon, who is going to slip into that 2-hole behind Garrett Cole. He hasn't thrown a pitch yet. You got Severino, who's been teasing me now for about 4 or 5 years. I remember
you loved Severino.
I loved him, and I'm getting to the point where I'm just frustrated. He's never on the field. He was supposed to be your number 3 guy. Nestor Cortez and Germán rounding that out. I think Germán's done a great job. I mean, he is what he is. He's a 3, 4, 5 guy at the end of that rotation, but I think a very serviceable guy. Garrett Cole's off to the best start in a long time. He's right up there with DeGrom in my eyes as far as how he's throwing the ball right now. But I mean, you just look at the roster. You got Jeff Donaldson hasn't played it down. You've got Stanton that went on his 6-week hiatus for the summer. He's out for 6 weeks. I think he's got 4 remaining on that. You just lost your big guy in Judge. Bader just came back. He hadn't had an at-bat all year, their center fielder. He just came back. He gets into a collision last night. He's out of the game. I think he's all right, by the way. But, Rizzo, Torres, DJ, they've been there start to finish. But Loaizaga, big guy in that bullpen, he's been out. So it seems like every year I see this with Aaron, and he gets roasted in New York. And I told him this all the time. I said, you got to love it though, man. I said, you're in the biggest industry, you're in the biggest sports market in the world, arguably with the biggest franchise in the world. And that's just the way it is. And if you ever win there one day, if you win a World Series, you'll go down as a Yankee legend. And I said, but But the con to that is you got to put up with this on a daily basis. And if anybody that's clear-minded and speaks honestly about the Yankees, look at the roster, look at who's on the field, who's not on the field, and still he's above 500 in the toughest division in baseball right now. Uh, you can't put it on him, and I laugh when people put it on him. That's the nature of the beast. That's being the Yankees manager, and you're going to deal with it. But the pros to me outweigh the cons. If I'm managing right now, I want to be in the biggest market in the world, and I'm going to be getting slings and arrows, and that's just part of the job. That's what you signed up for. But the reward on the other end, if they ever put it together. And Chico, I've been thinking about this a lot. It's a different world now. 2023 Major League Baseball is not 1989. 1989, that 162 game schedule was crucial. It was a grind. You were rewarded for being one of the best teams in baseball back then. It's not that way anymore. You don't have to win 92 games to get to the postseason. There are so many playoff spots available. It's not about the 162. Back in the 70s and the 80s, you think about it, it was the American League East and the American League West. You had to win your division. 2 teams from each league went to the postseason. That 162 was crucial. You had to be the best. Now you only had to win 1 playoff series to get to the World Series. So the postseason schedule wasn't like it is today. I'm not saying it was easier to win a World Series then or now. It's just much easier to get into the tournament now. I mean, you basically have to be a decent team and you get a playoff spot. I think a year ago, the Phillies proved that. They kind of limped into the playoffs, and they were a couple games away from winning a World Series. So much easier to get into the tournament. And I think a lot of teams across the board look at it that way. The Tampa Bay Rays are right now the best team in baseball. But how much does it matter? Their spot's not going to be any different than that 12th spot. You see what I'm saying? I mean, the Dodgers a year ago, they won 111 games. They were eliminated by the Padres, an inferior team at the time. So you got to get hot at the right time. I look at the Indians. I look where they are. They're in the worst division in baseball. That's the positive. And they're holding serve right now. They're 3 games out in the division. You get into the summer months and get hot, especially in that division. You can easily get a playoff berth. I look at the same thing with the Yankees right now. They're in the best division in baseball. Good thing for them is they've changed the schedule this year. So it's not beat up on each other in the best division. You're going to have an equal schedule for everybody. So I think Aaron, if I told him yesterday or 2 days ago when I talked to him, I said, all you got to do is survive for the next month. Get all the guys back, get them all healthy. Run it at 100%, and you can coast into the playoffs and get ready for that postseason marathon, which nowadays with the postseason schedule, it is a marathon.
So, okay, I'm guessing you had a chance to watch the series. I know you were, buzzing around in your jet copter for a while there, but I'm guessing you had a chance to watch the 3-game series or most of it.
I glanced at it, to be honest with you. No, I didn't watch line to line.
Okay, well, I can still because you mentioned it. The Guardians are, I mean, they're struggling. They're a team. You go back to last year. Now they added some power, obviously with Josh Bell this year and whatever. But they're a team that still that mindset is, we're gonna put a lot of pressure on the bases. We're gonna put a lot of pressure on teams. We're gonna go first to third. Obviously, hopefully, our pitching is gonna hold up. We know they've had a couple of injuries, speaking of which, in their rotation. But the thing is, Boone, and this is what has fans so frustrated. But it's part of being a fan, I guess, is that for a team that added a home run hitter, they haven't really hit the home runs yet. But then on top of it, if you're not stringing hits together, I mean, I'll admit it can be a very, very, very tough watch. And that's kind of where Terry Francona's bunch is right now. So give Guardians fans something to feel good about, Boone, as only you can.
Feel good about is the fact that they're not clicking offensively. They're 10th in the league offensively. Their starting pitching, with the exception of Bieber, has been not good at all. Not good at all. McKenzie's still not back. He was a huge piece last year. Their starting pitching's been very subpar. Their bullpen's been okay, decent. Their offense is what it is. This isn't going to be an offense that's going to light the world on fire. This isn't the Phillies. This isn't the Atlanta Braves. This is not the San Diego Padres offense. If you look up and down, there's not much star power in that offense. You've got a couple young players that are really good. I think you've shored up the catching position from a defensive tactical position with Zunino. But he is what he is offensively. He's going to hit a ball 500 feet. But at the end of the year, you flip that bubblegum card over, Zunino's going to hit 200. He does every year. You know what Quan is. You know what Straw is. Your star, Ramirez, yeah, he's often, he's doing fine, but he's not off to a Ramirez type start. When it heats up, I'm going to say at the end of the day, Ramirez is going to be the guy that he always is. Jimenez, not off to a great start. He's a young up-and-coming star. Josh Bell kind of is what he is. If you look at his track record, if you look at him a year ago, he got off to a horrendous start, got hot. So the thing is, they're 3 games out. They're almost 500. What are they, 14 and 16?
14 and 17. They've got Minnesota coming this weekend.
17, yeah. I keep mentioning that weak division. It is a weak division. It's weak. It's the weakest division in baseball. So that gives me a little bit of hope. And I really think organizations now and from now on are going to start thinking long term. Is we've just got to find a way to get to the point and get our team situated to get a playoff spot. And if we can get a playoff spot, then see what happens when we get there. So I think they're in no different position than the Yankees you just mentioned. Yankees are a little bit above 500, but they're hurt. They're banged up. They're not playing that great. I think what we compared to them at the beginning of the year, my team, the Mariners, they're a very similar team to the Mariners. Mariners are in a very similar position in their division. And they're banged up a little bit, but guys aren't hot. It's still, you got to remember, April is never the biggest offensive year or offensive month for anybody. Now, I'm going to take exception. The Toronto Blue Jays, hot, hot as it comes. Tampa Bay Rays, ridiculous. Who would think that Tampa Bay would be leading all of the big leagues in every offensive category and leading the big leagues in pitching? So they've got something going on over there. Once again, we always talk about them. They're the avatar. I can't put my finger on that, but I don't think. The fact is, we're through April. It starts getting serious now, but it's not like they played their way out. I look at a team that had higher hopes in the National League, the St. Louis Cardinals. They're 10 games out, and nobody expected them to be 10 and 20 or 10 and 21 right now. They're in trouble. But teams like the Guardians, 3 games out, end of April, look at it as you've survived a real mediocre month, and you got 5 months to play.
You actually led me right into my next question because
that's what I do, Chico.
Yeah, that's what you put it on the tee for me, and you just say, Chico, can you just put it in play for God's sake?
I'm here to help.
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try. You mentioned the Cardinals buried in the National League Central, and of course the Pirates, as we all expected, 20 and 11. But the Cardinals. The Cardinals are. You're right. I mean, it's bad. And then you look at the AL Central Division. And you got the White Sox. Now, last year, okay, Tony La Russa, and, well, they got off to a bad. You had injuries again, and they've had injuries again this year. But, like, if you're going to compare those two teams, like, which team, if you had to pick one that's in a bigger panic mode? I know there's still a lot of season left, but if there's more panic, is it in St. Louis or is it in Chicago right now with the White Sox?
I'd say Chicago. I'm writing them off. They don't have a chance. St. Louis, the only reason is because of that, once again, weak division. St. Louis is still the Cardinals. The White Sox haven't proven that they have that fortitude to dig out of this. I think the Chicago White Sox are done for this year. I don't see anything. I just don't see them rebounding. Now, 3 months from now, maybe I have egg on my face. I don't think so. I just look at this team. And it's like you've got arguably the worst pitching in the game.
Bullpen's horrendous.
It's horrendous. And, I've been waiting for years. Lance Lynn had a huge year last year. Clevenger coming over from the Padres, doing okay. Cease doing okay. Giolito, we've been waiting for years for Giolito. 2-3 years ago, we're thinking this guy is going to be a perennial Cy Young guy. Just hasn't panned out that way for him, and the bullpen's been terrible. Timmy Anderson, they're kind of their heart and soul hasn't been on the field. They lost a huge guy, especially not only from a production standpoint, but from just a presence in that clubhouse. And Abreu, he's gone. Moncada's been hurt. Robert, their up and coming star, he's hitting 217. I mean, he's not doing anything. Shortstop's being held down right now by Elvis Andrews. He's getting on the older side.
No spring
So
chicken, yeah.
I just look up and down that lineup. I look at that bullpen. Hendricks, obviously he's been out getting treated for cancer. He's their big closer. The closer in his place has got almost a 9 ERA. I just don't see a rally for the White Sox. Cardinals, maybe, but I don't really know. I look at that team. Flaherty's back. We've been waiting for Flaherty. He's supposed to be one of those studs for a long time. He's been on and off the field hurt. The rest of the rotation's okay. Montgomery's done well. They haven't had Adam Wainwright, who's been the anchor of that staff for a lot of years. I think he's making his debut tonight for the season after coming off that WBC injury. Cardinals are still the Cardinals at the end of the day. They got a little bit of a track record about playing good in a weak division. I give the Cardinals I don't give either one of them a good chance at this start. We talk about the Indians hold and serve. These guys haven't been hold and serve. They've dug big holes, but I would have to give the edge to the Cardinals to dig out of it. I give the White Sox no chance.
Yeah, and just to put an exclamation point on it, I guess, the thing that's so incredible, and yes, the White Sox have had so many injuries, but it wasn't. I mean, we're talking 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
They were the class of the division.
And not only that, but it was like, wow, if you're going to get the White Sox, you better get them now before these young guys mature and they mix with the veterans like Timmy Anderson. And then it's just never materialized. And it's one thing to not, okay, well, they haven't played up to potential, but they're like dead last. And it's just, it's mind-boggling.
There's certain teams that one individual player doesn't make or break that team. And there's certain teams that do have a player. I think Timmy Anderson's that player for the Chicago White Sox. He is a bigger hole than what he brings to the table from a production standpoint by him not being there on the field every day leading that White Sox team. I think he's one guy that transcends it. I don't want to put him in the Jeter category, but Jeter was so important. And it wasn't just his numbers, but him being on the field leading those Yankees teams, it was huge. I think Timmy, like I said, I don't want to put him in that category. That's big shoes to fill. But at the same time, I think he's one of those guys that's really critical to his organization.
Hits
and
for
he hasn't
average.
been on the field.
Yeah, hits for average, has some pop, can steal bases.
He's that Reggie Jackson. He stirs the drink for the current 2023 Chicago White Sox, and he hasn't been available.
Okay, so last thing for you before we get out of here, and I appreciate your time as always. Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates right now. Rays, as you talked about the hot start, 25-6, and the Pirates 20-11, 2-zip. The Rays are up right now in the bottom of the sixth. But I don't know if you saw it. I'm guessing you have. Wander Franco is one of the best young players in all of baseball. Shortstop.
I know where you're going.
Okay. All I'm going to say is this. I know that you're not that. I, for instance, am that guy yelling at the cloud, get off my lawn. So I understand, have some fun. That's great. You've kind of, hey, you know what? Let the kids have some fun. That was his Bush League of play. And you're an infielder, former infielder, all-star infielder. You get a ball like that. Let's harken back to early 2000. You get a ball like that. You toss it up in the air with your bare hand, catch it bare hand, fire over to first. Okay, you got the out. What does Lou Piniella say to you when you get to the bench?
Well, it's not Lou, it's my teammates. What they're going to say to me. The game is different.
Good point.
And you're right. I'm not that guy that
But please tell me you have a problem with this.
I've learned to have an open mind with today's game. It's different than my game. It's not for me to say how do you play the game right and wrong. It's the current player's game. At the same time, I do that. I'm not only going to have a problem with all my teammates. The other team's going to have a problem with me. So I'm going to get
dotted.
I'm going to get worn out by my teammates, and I'm going to probably wear one in the ribs next at bat by the other team for doing that. This, to me, yeah, I'm all for the game's changing. Hey, they're just more flamboyant about it. They're Emotions are on their sleeve, and that's Major League Baseball 2023. That to me, and I don't know if you've heard of this team, that's Savannah Bananas type crap.
Yes.
That's the Harlem Globetrotters. That's the exhibition.
It is.
When you buy a ticket to go be entertained, go to the circus, go to Cirque du Soleil. But to do that, and I got a lot of respect for Wander Franco. He is a young, talented kid.
Yep.
But that's not for a big league game.
After
a play is done and you do something, but in the middle of a play, one day he starts doing that and he thinks it's cute. One day that's going to bite him in the ass. I'll tell you what, he's not going to like that starting pitcher on the mound when he does mess that up. So I'm not here to sling arrows at people, but for me,
let me do that.
You don't do that on a big league field in the middle of a play.
I guess the only thing, and I'll let it die after this. I'm not going to go too nuts on it, but like, we're in agreement actually on the whole like excitement thing, like the bat flip. Now, I mean, some can get a little crazy, but for the most part, I don't really have a problem with the bat flip. But like when you say like, oh, hey, it's in the moment, you're excited, it's you wearing your emotions on your sleeve. That's cool. That was just flat hot dog. Like that wasn't like, wow, I don't know how to control my emotions. Let me flip this ball up, catch it, and fire it over to first. It was bush league.
That's something you do during batting practice when you're messing around taking ground balls. It's a premeditated thing. That's the one thing I don't like. The bat flips, because when I played, I had a bat flip and everybody talked about it.
Yes,
and it was fun for me and it was a shtick, but I didn't see any harm in it. So everybody assumes, oh, Bret will probably love the bat flips of today. I can't stand them. They're premeditated. They're not natural bat flips. They're hit a home run. Oh, it's a home run. Now what do? I got to do something really loony and crazy. Watch how far I throw this bat. So I'm not a bat flip guy. I don't like it. And I definitely don't like in the middle of a play doing something like that. It's one thing to when you're in the NFL and you're taunting somebody on the 10-yard line when you've got a 5-yard advantage. And maybe that's fine because that play's going to be done. Anything could happen in that little flip. So for me, I wouldn't want to have to face the wrath of not only my teammates, but especially that starting pitcher if I mess it up. And it determines the difference in a win and a loss.
The Bret Boone podcast is growing leaps and bounds in popularity. And one of the reasons is you're very diversified as far as the guests. I've said that many times. Eric Musselman, who is, I think, one of the most underrated college hoops coaches right now. He's at Arkansas. Tell me about that interview, and did you give him some pointers on, breaking the press and 2-3 zones and stuff like that?
Oh, I did. I broke it down, the X's and the O's, because, I'm so well versed in the college arena, college basketball. Now, it was a really interesting conversation, and my angle with Eric was, he's the Razorback head coach right now, but he's just his journey, his family, his father was a iconic coach before him, but it's just his journey. He went from assistant coach at the college level to head coach to assistant in the NBA to a head coach in the NBA and back to college. And I just wanted to talk to him about what's that like? What's that like going from a head coach in the NBA to an assistant college coach? Everybody would think, that's a huge step down. But it was interesting to hear his answers on how he learned from each place he was at. He got to coach under his father one year. I played under my father when he was a bench coach, never as a manager, but that was player coach. And I'm just thinking, if Dad was the manager and I was his bench coach, how that would work. And it was interesting, some of the answers he gave to me. So I really enjoyed it. He seems like a good guy, a fiery guy. I've watched some of his videos.
Oh yeah.
He'll piss off an opponent.
He's no nonsense.
No, he's no nonsense. And I really like that. He's a throwback. I mean, he's we used to see those clips back in the day of the NFL coach or the college coach in football.
Oklahoma drill.
Yeah, grabbing the lineman by the face mask. That's the way we did it when we were growing up. It seems like in the basketball, there's no face mask, but he seems that he's that type of coach.
I do one last thought on him. I remember when he took over Arkansas, he was all about like, we got to get tougher. We got to get tougher. And his players, like, they'd be coming through screens, and I mean, they'd be wearing. He'd have the kind of like a blocking sled in football, but he'd be, giving it to him. And they said like days after they couldn't move. They're like, I swear to God, it's like 2-a-days in football. Musselman just and it worked. I mean, it's worked. The guy knows what he's doing. You know what you're doing too. The Bret Boone podcast. As we said, it's all across Odyssey and wherever you get your podcasts, and you're just doing a hell of a job with that, Booney. It's no wonder to me how you can afford helicopters to just kind of, dilly-dally around town when you need to get to Martha's Vineyard or wherever the hell it is.
Wherever I may be traveling.
Booney, thank you for the time, buddy.
You got it. All right, Chico.
All right.
See you next week.
That is the all-star second baseman, Bret Boone. Always love talking with him. We'll take a break. We come back. Boom, are you up for a little fair or foul? End of the show edition.
I do have questions prepared. So
Boom never, ever backs down from a challenge. We'll see what he's got for us, too. And wow. Joe Thomas, Bret Boone. But I think you're gonna cap it off in an extraordinary way. We'll find out. It's the Chico Bormann Show. More to come. Winding it down right here on this Thursday afternoon on the Big Play Network. Don't go anywhere. Do not forget, we'll get to fair or foul here in just a moment, but don't forget, coming up tomorrow afternoon on the Chico Bormann Show, Saturday, we are just about 48 hours away from the Run for the Roses, the 149th edition, Boom. And our esteemed boss, Ken Miles, you heard we aired a tape clip taped segment, I should say, with him kind of describing the whole process of owning horses and race horses and Derby winning horses, which he has. And tomorrow, we're going to get down to the meat and potatoes, because basically what people are saying is, all right, look, the race is Saturday. Get me a horse that I can get some good odds on, win some cash. We're going to try to help you do that. Coming up Saturday. The race is Saturday. We'll talk to Ken tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock right here on the Chico Bormann Show on the Big Play Network. All right, without further ado, Boone is going to take us home. So many have said that to him late after one of his rock and roll gigs. Boone, take us home with a Thursday edition of Fair or Foul.
All righty, Chico. Well, let's kick things off in the NFL, where Bucks senior advisor Bruce Arians, you might remember that name.
I do remember that guy.
Yeah, had a bit of an eyebrow-raising sentiment he expressed, as he said that current Bucks quarterback Baker Mayfield, he would have him graded higher than any quarterback in this NFL draft. That includes Bryce Young, that includes C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson. Fair or foul, you buying, you picking up what Bruce Arians is putting down?
Well, okay. By asking that question, not to be difficult here, like the spelling bee champion trying to find 8 different origins of the word, but by asking that question, are you basically saying, do I believe that Bruce Arians is speaking like what he truly
Do you believe
believes?
him? Yeah. Is he telling the truth?
Foul. I do think that I get it. He's trying to build more confidence with Baker, and here's the thing though, Baker. If we go back to that draft, and I know we're not going to rehash this, and well, Chico, you really he was better than people gave him credit for, but he certainly wasn't as good as I thought he would be. But that said, he was highly touted coming out. It wasn't like he was, some had him as the top-ranked quarterback. So you look at this class. Bryce Young, for all of and he has a lot of great traits. There's a reason why Carolina drafted him 1 overall. He is smaller in stature, all that. C.J. Stroud, is a seemingly a prototype quarterback. Obviously got knocked down a few pegs with the whole testing stuff, fair or unfair, but that happened. And then Richardson, who has all the physical talent in the world, but is very raw. So I don't think it's out of the realm of it's the craziest thing I've ever heard. Now, again, your question to me was, do I think Bruce Arians believes Bruce Arians when he says, I've got Baker as the highest rated QB if he were in this class? No, I don't believe that.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I found that pretty hard to believe myself.
He's
but yeah,
Bruce Arians. Yeah, he's known for a little hyperbole.
I get it, though. You can't blame him. He can't come out and say, I would have preferred Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. That would
sure would like to have that Richardson kid. Oh, but we got Baker. We're good.
Real endorsement of confidence for old Baker there.
Yeah.
So I want to go over to the NBA. Name that we have talked about a lot this week, Dylan Brooks. Got some player odds for you for his next team. Now, I'm kind of an amateur with gambling, so the higher the number, that means the higher odds, right? So that means he's more likely to go to the number with the highest.
No, more likely to go the low. So
okay.
I talked about. Remember me mentioning this earlier in the first hour?
Yeah.
Did you, or were you
Dylan
not
Brooks?
Yeah.
I heard you mention him. Did you said the odds?
I didn't say the odds.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm glad you haven't. Go ahead.
Okay, so the team with the best odds at plus 700, and it's Cleveland Cavaliers. Don't forget, you can place these bets at the Tipico Sportsbook. Shout out to our sponsors. Second place, you've got the Phoenix Suns.
So smooth you are, Boone.
Thank you, Chico.
Growing up right before our eyes.
So second, we've got the Phoenix Suns at plus 800, Miami Heat at plus 1300, and Indiana at plus 1300 as well. Fair or foul, Cavs having the highest odds to land Dylan Brooks.
Oh, okay. Can I say fair and foul? It's fair because for people that, and I know we watched it much more closely, and obviously we know and have talked about it and heard about it since the series ended, while they need to get much tougher. What does Dylan Brooks bring? Toughness. So I was actually surprised. Like I said, I was watching listening to a national show earlier this morning, and he had his some other guys on the show guess, like, who do you think has the best odds as far as getting Dylan Brooks? And they all get, like I said, it was Pistons, Pacers. I think Pacers were mentioned. Pistons, Magic, Celtics. And he's like, no, Cleveland Cavaliers. Well, again, what was the biggest takeaway from the Cavaliers-Knicks series, where they lost 4-1, and with the exception of Game 2, were pretty much irrelevant, was they need to be much tougher, much more physical. So Dylan Brooks brings that. I will never say, obviously he does. But I'm sorry, no thank you. I don't, sometimes it's a little too much. And I know people are going to disagree with that, and that's fine. But I think J.B. Bickerstaff has worked hard, and the Cavs have worked hard to build a culture. Now, not saying you need a choir boy, but there are guys out there who are tough that aren't going to be me. And Dylan Brooks, not just because of what he said about LeBron, the idea that if you're going to say that, then your ass better be talking to the media when you lose games and not leaving right away and leaving your teammates to clean that up. Like, that is not cool. That is not a team guy, and he's not a team guy.
Yeah, I just don't think that attitude of, like, being so willing to openly disrespect a superstar
Yeah.
and put your team in that position, I don't feel like that vibes with this Cavs roster.
I will say the under, because what stood out to everybody, including myself, was the under no circumstances. Like, I have never seen that before. Under no circumstances is this guy coming back. But, you can talk about whether that was a little, too much. But as far as the Cavaliers, and I know fans will probably disagree with me, that's fine. But no thank you.
Yes, after that vehemently adamant proclamation. Vehemently.
That's all right. I like that pronunciation.
Vehemently adamant proclamation.
That kind of sounds more sophisticated. He vehemently denied it. He was very animated and, well,
It's my
vehement.
Shakespearean side, Chico. Well, I would like to stick
I
with
love
the
you,
NBA
Paul.
here for the next one.
Yeah.
Patrick Beverley also making some interesting headlines yesterday when on his podcast, he said 50% of players in the NBA don't love basketball. Said, most teammates I know who don't love basketball are really the effing good ones. Let's see what else he said. He said, the preparation is different when you have so much skill that you can just show up to the game and get an MF in 30. That might work against other teams who aren't that good, but you can't do that in the playoffs. Fair or foul, you buying that 50% of players don't love basketball in the NBA?
I don't know. I'll go foul in terms of that high, but I do think it could be right around there. I mean, this is just, look, it's the nature of sports these days. We talk about it with the NFL. We talk about it with the Browns. Like, make sure you get guys. And I know it's not easy to do. Otherwise, we'd all be general managers, and we're not. But get great players. You got to get that talent. But at the end of the day, if they're gonna be around a while, if they're gonna produce, if they're gonna be consistent, you better love the sport, because you're gonna be, it's gonna. And sometimes you say, well, the sacrifices. Yeah, that's why the good ones. I mean, Joe Thomas was just on with us. Think that dude didn't sacrifice a lot? Time, all that stuff. It's part of it. But to his point, yeah, he's right about the postseason. Like, that's when the rubber meets the road. And if you're somebody who you're going to get by with talent, and a lot of guys in the NBA do, he's right. It ain't going to cut it in the postseason. It's just some guys hey, they want to get paid. They get paid. They got their brand. They want to enhance their brand. That's in check. Okay, good. All right, let's play some hoops. But, am I really going to be bummed out at the end of the day if we lose? No. There were guys, Michael Jordan, are you kidding me? Like, he was nearly in tears in the documentary talking about decades ago when he'd get on teammates too much because he wanted to win and thought everybody else should have that. That mindset today is nowhere near what it used to be. That's very true.
I do agree with that, Chico. I do think that this is definitely...
Do you vehemently agree, or do you just vehemently agree?
Vehemently.
Vehemently. All right. I like that. I like that.
Yes. All right, well, we'll put a bow on today's Fair or Foul with one more. We kind of talked about it earlier in the show. DeJuan Jones, Ohio State offensive tackle drafted by the Browns. Now, there's this controversy that dropped there were a few questionable decisions that DeJuan Jones made over the course of this pre-draft process with the Senior Bowl, putting on weight going into the combine, and with the Senior Bowl he dropped out after one day of being really good, looking like maybe the best tackle there.
Well, Edholm said he looked good, but he wasn't the best, but he looked good. But he said, yeah, it was kind of like, I don't know if that's your walk-off.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He walked off, and that was it. I'm done.
Yeah, and amongst all of that, there was also this headline from yesterday that he would have rather played in the NBA than the NFL. Is it fair or foul for an organization to be turned off by a prospect specifically for the reason of wishing you were a basketball player and not a pro football player?
Well, okay, I'm going to say fair on this and also say that I don't think he's being honest. Like, are there some guys that are professional football players that love basketball or baseball more? Sure. Are there some baseball players that love football more? Sure. It's okay. But, for teams to say, when you're investing that kind of money in a guy, that's why we say, it's just go back to old Ray Farmer. He's going to find his way in here somehow. Ray Farmer and Justin Gilbert. Guy has deep-seated demons, didn't really care. You've got to find that out. But in the case of DeJuan Jones, I think it was more just, I don't think that's... Now, if he says, I don't know if I have it in me to, get through camp and all the practice and all the stuff I got to do with my body, then you're really concerned. But I don't think it's that big of an alarm bell.
I'm less concerned with that than I would be with a lot of other, potential career avenues that a pro football player might want to pursue. It still parallels that pro athlete mentality, and it's like, this is where your talent is, this is where you can be successful in that regard with that pro athlete lifestyle and way of life. And also, I do think I agree with you in that there's something to be said about that level of authenticity in a player, not just saying what what teams want to hear.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that about him, and I don't think
there's a fine line. There's a good
Sure.
You don't want to be truthful, be honest, but you also don't want to root. But I don't think it was that big of a deal. I really don't. And that is fair or foul on this Thursday. Great John Bob. All right, before we get out of here, I got to remember we were talking about this sports betting in Ohio was you weren't allowed to bet on Alabama baseball. And I was like, wow, that's a really strange. So real quick before we get out of here, Alabama baseball coach Brad Bohannon was fired today, 5 days after suspicious wagering was detected in the Crimson Tide's game at LSU.
we got our mole.
And the alleged suspicious activity took place Friday at the sportsbook at the Great American Ballpark, according to the Ohio Casino Control Commission. But, I'm laughing, but it's not funny. But see, this is why it's great. Don't get me wrong. But when they set these rules for the players and the whole Pete Rose thing and people want to just blow it up, this is why. Because this is what happens. If you get involved, well, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, wait, now I've got six-figure debt. Hey, we don't want you throwing that stud lefty you got. Okay, yeah, if that'll forgive my debt, I'm cool with that. That's why you don't do it. That's why it's in neon lights in every clubhouse. But anyway, now, for his fans, go to it. Go for it. Tipico. Yeah, get those odds like Boone just vehemently gave to you.
I would really love to know, actually what he did to influence these games.
I want to get to the bottom of it too, and maybe we will.
To be a fly in that dugout.
Ooh, oh yeah, I see what you did there, Bohm. You're absolutely right. All right, we're out of time for this Thursday. Man, so much good stuff today. Really appreciated Joe Thomas. Really appreciated Bret Boone, who joins us weekly. If you missed any of it, obviously go to the website bigplay.com. You can also go to Twitter at Chico Show CLE and replay. We're going to have clips. We're going to have reels that you can catch on Instagram, all that good stuff. YouTube, Chico Bormann Show. Hit subscribe. But really, really good stuff today. Obviously couldn't have done it with those guys. And I couldn't have done it without my good buddy who was very vehement about being here today, Michael Bohm. I'm Mike Chico Bormann. This is the Chico Bormann Show. Have a great Thursday. We'll talk to you again tomorrow at 1.